Good evening, all you Zoomers. I'm so excited to have you guys join us tonight. We have a fantastic program coming up tonight. I'm Captain Jim Sharp. Sharps Point South, the home of the world famous Sail Power Steam Museum. You know all about that if you've looked at some of these Zoom programs before. Wonderful Sail Power Steam Museum in South End of Rockland is the finest maritime museum in Rockland. My gosh, it's fantastic. If you haven't been there, put it on your bucket list. This beside me is my little wife, Meg. She's the driving force of this thing. So we've got a great program coming up for you tonight. We got so much to see and so much to hear tonight that we're going to skimp on the commercial, which will make you very unhappy, I'm sure. But it slights me. I enjoy this commercial so much. But we're going to do this program tonight on the fantastic world of towboating. The fantastic world of towboats. Everybody loves Theodore. Theodore is the essence of towboating. They always draws a crowd. The towboats, the little vessels that push these great big vessels around, little small vessels with great big engines in them, and they are a fascination for everybody. And thanks very much to John Worth, who said to me one day, why don't we do the world of towboats on your Zoom program? And I said, gee, that's a great idea, John. I think we ought to do that. And he really was the impetus to it. He's an amazing man. John Worth is not only an educator, is not only a captain of towboats, of sailing boats, he's also a teacher at the Maine Maritime Academy and a guy with vast experience on the water. So, John, we're going to keep on going here. The only thing is I've got to do a little bit of commercial work here. I've got to tell you a little bit about our fantastic new building. We decided, since we were chock-a-block full of memorabilia in the old museum up on the upper left there, and we had to do something about this empty lot over behind the schooner on the right hand. So we decided we would build this building, and there's the rendering of what it's supposed to look like. And when you start in to build a building, the first thing you do is get a backhoe. Get a great big backhoe there. I love this picture with Meg sitting on the bucket. And make a whole lot of noise and dig a great big hole and have the neighbors complain about it. Then you know you're making progress. So we made progress over last summer. Up in the upper left, you can see the frame going up and the building being built right behind our schooner. And then down in the lower one, that's the way the building looked in the fall. Our last fall flower on the rose bush there. And that's the way it's going to look this spring, where we're going to put 20 antique boats in there, and we're going to have a whole lot of wonderful memorabilia and expand the museum into that building. Really so exciting. But I'm going to quickly move on. I say quickly, but I can't move on without telling you about Skiff. This is my pride and joy. One of the arms of this great museum here is our Skiff program, Sail Kids for Free. That's an amazing program. I just get so excited about it. In the left side there, you see these little kids from 8 to 14 years old. They're there setting their sails. They're learning all about what to do with a boat, what a rudder is and what a centerboard is and how to control the rudder and what to do. One guy to a boat. That's the way we do it. One guy in boat. These are little Optimus prams. You have to perform. You have to do your thing in these boats or you don't get anywhere. We put them overboard. We have a chase boat that goes along with them and tells them what to do. And look at this guy over on the right there. His boat's named Catfight, and he's got a great smile on his face. And behind him is his buddy. And of course, the first thing they try and do is race, see who can get ahead of the other guy. That's what we have down in the bottom there. All of these vessels, all of these little tiny Optimus prams out there going around the buoy, and the guys get so excited they forget all about their telephones, they forget all about the internet. And here's the way we do it. Day one on the orientation, right up there, the kids go put the boats overboard for the very first time, and they push away from the dock, and oh my God, are they excited, trying to figure out how this thing works. And then in day two, they get out there, you can see the wind is out beyond. The wind is out on the other side of the harbor right there, and they're sailing out and they get in the wind. And day three, they're going around the buoys out there, and for day four, they're really getting professional now. They've turned the boat over, righted it up, bailed it out, and now they're going out into the big water out in the middle of the harbor. And last day, a whole week sail training, they get together, and who wants to go sailing again? Everybody raises their hand. They just can't wait to do it again. let me tell you how we operate this. Donate to Skiff $100. $100 isn't worth much anymore. You can afford $100, and we guarantee you we will match your $100 with another kid. We'll put two kids, pardon me, two kids out there in a boat for $100, four kids for $200, six kids for $300. My gosh, say all the way up $500, a whole class of 10 kids. That's the way we work it. Look at these two kids over on the right there. The two of them sailing off together. They've learned how to sail now, and they're before the wind. And over in the left side there, I am the captain, a big smile on his face. Keep them sailing. We couldn't do it without you. Keep them sailing. And we will thank you to help keep these kids away from their telephone and put them on the water. Now, one more thing. The morning in Maine. 2 months ago, this boat was donated to us, a 55-foot peach color catch that does 2-hour sails in the harbor of Rockland with 2 lighthouses to photograph. And we've got a good captain going in it, Tyler Waterson, and he's going to be running the boat all summer in and out of Rockland Harbor carrying passengers. So now let's part the screen here. Take a look at this vessel. The last steam vessel operating on the east coast of North America. The last steam vessel, the Clyde B. Holmes. Look at that magnificent vessel. I used to go across the bridge in my car, look back at the docks, the tugboat docks there in Belfast, and there'd be the Clyde B with a great big stack, that huge stack sticking up in the air, dominating everything around it, and a wisp of smoke that came out of the stack, of course. And because you had steam up all the way up into the 1970s. In 1977, she was still operating in a good vessel. I was fascinated by it. I ran down there one day and I said, I got to see this boat. I went in and introduced myself to Clyde Holmes. He said, I know you. You're the schooner man down in Camden. I said, yeah, well, he said, let me give you a little look around. So he took me over. He took me through the Clyde Holmes. Boat was built by the city of Philadelphia back in 1926 without regard to expense. No expense was too much for this vessel. They put everything into it, built to the nines. They had in the fiddly mahogany paneling back in the after cabin in the house there. That was all mahogany paneled. It was like a smoking room, a drawing room back there, built by the politicians in Philadelphia to carry dignitaries on the Delaware River along the waterfront in Philadelphia. And of course, politically, there was no cost. I mean, it was a tugboat, so it was justifiable. And of course, plated by riveted iron plates and at least low carbon. And the darn thing didn't rust. I went all over it and it was in magnificent condition. So I said, well, Clyde, what are you going to do with this vessel? Well, he said, we're going to have to get rid of it. There's the dock in Belfast, and if you look closely there, you can see that stack sticking up off of the Clyde B. Holmes. He said, we're going to have to scrap it. I said, come on, Clyde, you can't scrap that. The last steam tug in the United States, in the east coast of the United States. Well, he said, I tried to give it away. I've tried to give it to a museum, tried to sell it. We've tried everything we can. It's too expensive to run. We have to keep steam up all the time, so we have to get rid of it. I said, oh, God, you shouldn't do that, Clyde. Well, I had just come from a divorce, and I was just full of reckless abandon. And I turned to him and said, Clyde, if you take that boat and deliver it to Camden Harbor tomorrow morning on the morning tide, early in the morning, I'll give you the price of scrap for it. He said, done deal. Slammed his fist down on the top. Done deal. I said, okay, God, now what have I done? I jumped in my car, ran down to Camden. I went to the code officer in Camden. I said, if I bring a boat in and I keep it below the high tide line, it's not a building. Do I have to have any permits for it? No, he says, not my bailiwick. We don't have anything to do with that. We only do buildings. He said, you have to talk to the harbor master. So I went and talked to the harbor master. I said, if I put it above the low tide mark, beyond the wharf line, do you have any permitting necessary? No, I said, it won't bother us at all. So I went to the Coast Guard. I said, if we chain it to the dock Can we have people aboard without any permits? Yes, he said, if it's chained to the dock, it won't be underway. So I went to the customs office, said, if we have a vessel under repair, can we keep her in documentation? Oh, yes, forever, as long as you want. As long as it's under repair, why, there's no problem. I found a niche where I could put a boat, and the government hadn't found that niche. So early in the morning, the Clyde B. Holmes came down with the Mary Holmes, chugging away on her hip. Earlier than that, I was out in the harbor there pushing the ice cakes, these great big thick ice cakes out of the slipway, so that we could get the boat in there and pull her all the way up into the head of that little slip. You can see the Adventure and the Roseway behind. I had to move them out a little bit so we could sneak in behind them. And there's the vessel tied up, chained to the dock there, ready to be converted into a restaurant. Now, I know you purists, you're going to say, oh my God, a restaurant. Another vessel goes to the dark confines of a restaurant. It's terrible. But it's far better than the scrapyard. And people can go aboard it. Lots of people can go aboard it and see what a tug with a 1,000-horse, 2-stage steam engine really looks like, what it's really all about. And I think it's a wonderful way to help preserve our, our historical maritime. So the first thing I did, ride down to Rockland, and there was a used car lot down there halfway to Rockland. And this guy had a crane in there, and he had a Volkswagen on the crane, picked it up, and he was using it as a sign for his used car lot. I said, oh my God, I just stopped, screeched to a stop, jumped out of the car. I said, how much for that? And I pointed up at it. He said, for the Volkswagen? I said, no, for the crane. Oh my God, we talked it over, and I made a deal with him, bought that crane for $3,000. I said, you deliver it to me tomorrow morning. And he said he would. So we brought it down, squeaking and cracking and grunting down the road into my dooryard there. The old crane came. We set it down, set it together, and I got a great big rock, put a chain around it. He showed me what levers to pull. So I picked the rock up and I moved it over and set it down, picked it up, moved it over, did that about 145 times. And then I finally got my courage up and picked the stack off the top of the Clyde B. Holmes. That opened up a 15-foot hole right in the top deck. And out of that hole, we took out all the superfluous paraphernalia. We cut up her boilers, we cut up everything that we could cut up to pull it out. We made 2 dining rooms down in the lower deck there. We gussied up the engine, polished it, painted it, put it on an electric motor so it would turn over very slowly while people were eating dinner. We went to work and put the galley in up forward there. She had 18,000 gallons of fuel oil, 18,500 gallons of fuel oil, bunker oil in her. I heated it, pumped it off, and sold it. And that paid for almost all of my expenses so far. Anyway, we put that thing together and made a lovely restaurant out of it. The John Wannamaker, we had two dining rooms down below, the engine boiler room and the engine room and the boiler room dining room area. And then we had on the top deck room for 75 more. That's 125 plus 75. We over 200 people aboard that for lunch for 4 years. We had a wonderful restaurant there. We had a gale of wind, hurricane. The old thing floated up. Fortunately, we weren't open at that particular time, but it enabled us to get her further up in the slipway beyond where she was before, so that she wouldn't ever float beyond that. That was quite a storm. And we ran the thing for 4 years. My sister, it wore her out. We had 22 employees running around that boat, serving finest wine and wonderful dinners. And she got a little tired of it all and became, well, it was affecting her health. I said, Chris, we don't have to do this. So we decided we would lease it to restaurateurs down in Boston. I backed up 2 cement trucks and filled her full of cement down in the bottom of her because I had taken so much ballast out of her. And took the boat down to center of Boston by the Children's Museum and set it up as a restaurant. They were there 1 year and failed. So we put it up for sale, and we got a call that a couple of restaurateurs interested in getting the old Pegasus. They were going to put her in the restaurant business in Boston. I guess it's a wooden boat. So I called him up right away. I said, that wooden boat's going to eat you alive. I said, I have a boat down there. You can go over and take a look at it. It's already got a kitchen in it, and it's all set to go. They went over and looked at it and bought it. So we put it on the 10-year mortgage. They painted it light blue. Oh my God, painted the tugboat light blue. So embarrassing. And they called it the Edmund Fitzgerald. But that's what they did. And it was a financial success. But it introduced me to the towboat business. Because, of course, I knew Clyde Holmes, and I had a towboat license. And I understood all of a sudden that there was a strike up there. Later on in the year 1977, the boys decided they were going to strike. They wanted a union. Clyde Holmes, he always gave them everything they wanted. Anyway, I knew they were going to bring a crew up from Boston to dock these ships. The ships are coming, and they got to dock them somehow. Rather than see them bring a crew up from down there, I called up Clyde, and I said, Clyde, I have a towboat license. I'd be glad to run one of the boats for you if you want me to. He said, that'd be great, Jim. He called me back a couple of days later. He said, go down to Rockland and go up a tug called the Thomas St. Philip and bring her up. The ship's going to be arriving just about at dawn. So, and he said, by the way, he said, when you leave the dock, you might as well not turn your running lights on until you get out to the breakwater. I said, oh my God, what have I got myself into? But I got on the Thomas St. Philip, and she was a simple boat to run. First big tug I've ever run. I've been on smaller tugs. But anyway, took her off. We went up there and went alongside. I went under the bow of the ship, got a headline up, and the ship then was towing us along. And this other vessel came in behind us, the L&F from Boston. I figured it was from Boston anyway, tied up on the stern. So we're going along on my naivety. Gil Hall, I think, was the pilot. He said, Thomas, one bell straight on. So I said, one bell straight on, wonder what that means. I guess since we're going straight, I guess that's straight on. So I put her in gear and we started ahead a little bit, took up the slack on my headline, and we're going along. And all of a sudden over the radio on the other channel, it says, left rudder on the Thomas. I said to myself, who the hell's that? That's not Gil. Left rudder on the Thomas. Came a little faster. Pretty soon, put left rudder on the damn Thomas. So I thought, geez, I better find out about this. So I said, Gil, when you say straight on, you're talking about straight ahead with the vessel or 90 degrees from the keel? He said, oh, 90 degrees from the keel, Jim. Oh, okay. So I put her 90 degrees from, well, finally I understood. We went on from there on. And then I found out that I'm not working for Clyde Holmes anymore. I'm working for Arthur Fournier, Captain Arthur Fournier. He came in and bought the whole outfit while the boys were out on strike. Well, I had no idea that was happening. But we went back to the dock and I tied the Thomas up. I had planned a car up there way earlier in the wee hours of the morning. I got in my car and I had to go out through the picket line. Well, I saw John Doak out there. He was the captain of the Clyde. And I knew some of those guys, Sandy and so on. And in my naivety, I stopped and rolled the window down. I said, don't worry, guys, I'm going back to my schooner. I'm only doing this just once or twice for the experience. Well, they didn't want to hear that. They spit on my car and they pounded on the fenders and made it very obvious that I was a scab. So I didn't think of myself as a scab, but I guess I was. So I came back, and the next time I came through the picket line, the police were there and so on. I didn't stop at all. I just went right in, just got aboard the boat. We went and sailed that ship after a few days. And then I came back, and Arthur had the Mary Holmes there then. And I loved the Mary Holmes. And he didn't like the Mary Holmes, so he gave that one to me to run. I thought that was great. That was more fun to run, far more fun than the Thomas. She was direct reversing, pilot house control, and a wonderful, wonderful boat. I'd love to tell you all about the different things that I did there, but I got to turn this over and keep on the move because we have so much to see. Arthur Fournier was quite a man to work for. He was a piece of work if there ever was. And all of you guys that have worked for Arthur Fournier, course, the stories go on and on ad infinitum. It's amazing. Arthur had a fetish for profanity. Every sentence that he ever uttered to me was punctuated with the profane, at least 50%. When he'd get excited and things would go wrong, and things did go wrong frequently, he would get excited, and then there would be so much profanity in the sentence, you had to pick out the words in between that sort of indicated what he wanted you to do. And he was a very intense man, very short on patience and short on instructions, but very long on expecting quite a lot. I worked for him for 8 winters. I was the longest employee, the longest tenure of any employee during those 8 years. He would hire somebody, get mad at him, fire him. They would quit. They would all have all kinds of problems. But he and I got along all right. I was very conscientious. I never was late. I was always on time. I never asked about me getting more money. I wanted it for the experience. And he and I understood each other, I guess, but he put up with me for 8 years, taught me an awful lot, ran all these different boats for him. And nowhere else in this world could I go with my bad legs and so on and blow in the pilot house and be able to run all of these ancient tugboats. I am so thankful for him for allowing me to do that. I couldn't come in the hose pipe like the other guys and work on deck, but I could run a boat from the pilot house. So we had a great time, did an awful lot of great barge work, great salvage work, and all kinds of great work. And I ran the Mary Holmes the whole time that he had it. Eventually, the Mary Holmes went on her way. And so did Arthur, of course. But I admired that guy because he brought himself up with his own bootstraps. He started out in the lower parts of Boston, up in Chelsea Creek there. And he found this old wooden tugboat that was abandoned for 2 years. He raised it. He had an old wrecked Greyhound bus. He took the engine out of it and he stuck it in this old thing just when he was a kid and hooked it all up. And pretty soon he was pushing sand and garbage scows around Boston Harbor, and mostly alone. He was known for the fact that he had maybe a dog for a deckhand. That's all he had. Rough and tough guy, though. He would shinny back on the tow line to the barge behind him and adjust whatever it was he had to adjust. And some of the cases set fire to the trash that he was hauling out of Boston Harbor. I mean, a lot of just incredible stories he told me about. And of course, the great shootout down at Pier 50. Arthur went in, knew somebody was there. He's quick. He is so quick. He thinks so fast, even though he never had an awful lot of education. He was an amazing guy. Down behind the desk, he dove, drawing his gun out as he went, and he got shot 12 times. That didn't stop him. He shot up the other guys, and one thing that he said was, "I die hard," and I believe it. I believe that guy is really. He had several lives over and over, but he loved to tell that story too. There's the Mary Holmes. She was my pride and joy. I really loved her. She was a sharp-looking little boat, really perky, and this great big standard in the wheelhouse, where off position, all brass and polished and mahogany. Oh, it was just a beautiful thing. 12 o'clock was the off station. It was direct reversing, and you had to start with air. So you'd roll it down to the 8 o'clock position where the pointer goes down to 8 o'clock, and you could hear the air go into it. Then you had to tickle the throttle a little bit till she would take. Then you moved it up to the 10 o'clock position, and then she was in gear and going. Of course, she's in gear going direct reverse. She's just connected right to the engine. So she's starting to immediately answer to a rudder. So you got to turn the wheel and fix the throttle and toot the whistle and do 4 or 5 things all at the same time. And it was like rubbing your belly and tapping your head, It was just more fun to run that boat. Never in my life I'd be able to run a wonderful boat like that if it weren't for Arthur Fournier. Well, we did a lot of work down at Bath, and Arthur got his way in there. Here's the Patrick alongside We're moving small boats one side, the other, Winslow tug on the other end of this Navy ship. I don't know what that one was all about. We were down there a number of times doing different jobs. And finally it came to the point where they were going to have the biggest launching ever in the Bath shipyard there, probably the last gravity launch. It was to be the Maui. She was a 750-foot container ship. And by that time, we had the Cape Fear. The Cape Fear was a wonderful boat, big heavy boat with a huge engine, EMD, 12-cylinder. I'm not sure if Leo Mazerol is on here. I hope he is. Leo, if you're on there, unmute yourself and make yourself known. He was my engineer. Anyway, we were told to go and hook on there. Arthur was going to be the docking pilot. He was going to be on the ship.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here, Jim.
Well, hello, Leo. I hope you're paying attention.
I certainly am.
Arthur, in typical fashion, he said, Jim, go take Cape Fear and put a line on that. That ship. Put a long line on that ship so you can be out in the middle of the stream and you'll be the towing vessel towing her off the ways. And I said, okay. Now the Cape Fear didn't have any pilot house controls. The Cape Fear was strictly a bell boat. We rang the bells to the engine room, and you have to have a good engineer. And then she had two pulls there. One's a bell pull to tell what direction you want the engine to go in, and the other was a whistle pull to tell you how much throttle you wanted the engineer to give it. And all of that was down in the engine room. And we had a speaking tube in between, and every now and then I'd hear Leo down there throwing wrenches around and cursing and carrying on. But then I'd know he's awake anyway. So we put the line on the ship, great big ship. You can imagine a 750-foot commercial vessel container ship. She had a barn door of a transom on her, and over that barn door they had stave up great big timbers all the way across it so that when she entered the water, that would create drag and slow her down. When a gravity vessel that size goes down, that length goes down, she makes up to 12 and 14 knot entering the water. Well, the Cape Fear had a top speed of 12 knot. Arthur said, just be careful, stay in front of the ship and don't let the hawser get too slack and get fouled on anything. And that's about all he told me. And then I found out that the last gravity launch they had there, they had a ship that came down and overhauled the tug, and the tug was tripped and turned over and drowned 2 men. I said, oh, thanks a lot, Arthur. But we got over there, we got in position, and Leo Mazerol was down there at the engine's controls, and we had a little tugboat called the Kennebec, came along on our side, 90 degrees to our keel, because there's always a little current running down the Kennebec, and we couldn't put any strain on that hawser, not while the vessel was up there, they're doing their speeches and having their dedications. We didn't put any strain on the hawser for fear we'd have an early launch, so we couldn't do that and interrupt any of the political speeches. So no strain on that hawser was the word. So the Kennebec was holding me upstream against the tide, the current coming down. And he's looking up at this great, huge stern of this vessel. And he's thinking as the time's going by and getting closer and closer to launch time, and it would be announced on the radio when they have a launch as soon as she started to move. And they got more and more nervous. And you could see the captain down in the Kennebec, he was strutting back and forth, and he didn't like this at all, holding me up against the current. Pretty soon, he decided he would leave. He turned and left me there by myself. I was crying out loud. I was hollering out the window, you're supposed to be. No, he's gone. Anyway, I had to turn the helm all the way over to port against this little current and cheat by giving a very slow bell to Leo and keep the boat up so that we were in line behind the ship. And I had to do that 3 or 4 times. Well, of course, the last time I did it, the helm was all the way over, and I had just a dead slow bell on there just to work our way up there. And it came over the radio, we have a launch, we have a launch. So of course, oh my God, we have a launch. So I said, put down the whistle. So Leo said, give me throttle, give me throttle. And of course, he gave me throttle right away. That old engine went up and the Cape Fear jumped ahead, but her wheel, she's slow and it was electric steering and she's slow and steering. The rudder was still over. So of course, when the vessel took off, it took off going to the left like crazy. I'm spinning that wheel around, spinning that wheel around. Of course, I oversteered so that it came around the other way. And then she's going off to starboard. And I look back and here this ship is coming down, coming into the water. And I could see the slack in the hawser back there. I forgot to tell you, I had two other deckhands and they're both back there by that hawser. And I said, take the fire axes down off of their holders and stand by that bit where that thing's made onto the tug. If it ever comes up real tight and you see the tug starting to lean over, cut that line off as quick as you can. So they were standing back there with the axes. Anyway, I got the vessel straightened out finally, but of course we did an S-turn in front of the ship as it came down. And I look back and here's this grade at Niagara Falls on the stern of that vessel where all this bunting came into the water and she's slowing down now. And I'm speeding up. So of course I ring off. Leo's right there on the throttle and he brings off and stops and I had to bring two bells, started in reverse again, gave her a half in reverse so that we would slow down and wouldn't fetch up on that hawser so tightly. And she slowed down, and the hawser came up out of the water and shook just like an old dog throwing water every direction. But it worked out fine. We were able to turn the ship around. Then the other tugs that were down there turned around, grabbed a hold of her too, and we took her over and docked her. Well, that wasn't the end of the story. As we were docking her, we came off of the hawser and we went under her bow. We were pushing her bow into her berth. And Leo came up and he said, the generator's killed. The generator won't work anymore. I said, oh my God, well, we got to dock this ship. Well, he said, you're only going to have a minimum number of starts again, and we won't have any more starting. So, oh, geez, I said, okay, well, we'll do the best we can. He said, I'll keep an eye on it. So we're docking the ship and I had to push ahead and then I had to stop and then I have to push ahead and then I have to stop. And each time we're using up more air. Finally, Leo radios up to me in the speaking tube and he says, I think you have one more start. So I said, okay. So I cheated when I got another message to give a push. I didn't do it. And then I waited a little while and then I got another message to stop. And I got away with a couple of starts that way. And then finally Leo said, I think you got one more start. So that ship was docked. We took our headline in and I let her drift away from the ship of the current until we got her turned around and I gave her that last start and we went over and we tied up and I shut her down. We got a line on the piling over there and made it to our berth without having to call the other tugs to come and get us in our peril. I don't think Arthur knew it. And only my crew, the rest of the crew, I don't think they knew it, but Leo knew it and I knew it anyway. But that was quite a day, Leo.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You remember all that, do you?
Every time we were on Cape Fear, I never knew what was going on topside, but I knew that if you were there, I was gonna answer your bell no matter what. And we always did well. It was fun. It was a fun boat to run.
It was a fun boat to run. And I used to give you a soft bell once in a while.
Yeah.
You'd get so mad, I'd pull the bell up as if I was going to ring it, and then I'd lower it down real quietly. And I could hear you cussing and carrying on down there. You got me back, though. You got me back many times. Well, there's Leo right on the bow there, making up the headline on something. I don't know what we were doing that time, but that was a lot of fun. We used to heckle each other quite a lot. The Cape Fear was a thin boat. She had an awful lot of, what do you call it, the putty in her bottom. She was so thin, and the ice, we were so afraid the ice would cut her up that we had to be real careful with her in the wintertime down there. And there she is, the Cape Fear and the Patrick McAllister. Patrick had that tall pilot house on her, and you can see the visor on the Patrick is all bent up from going under the stern of a ship or something like that, that they always crowd in so tightly, and that comes up and connects with the vessel and makes it look pretty funny. But the old Cape Fear was a wonderful boat to run. I enjoyed running that boat. And eventually we got the Bronx. There was a lot of trade-offs of different vessels. Arthur would say, well, the Bronx, she's wonderful. She's just big, just plain big. Well, we used the Bronx quite a lot. She was a nice boat to run, easy boat to run too. And the pride of the fleet there, when I was there, that was the latter part of my career with Arthur. Eventually I got too old to do the night work, and Arthur didn't want me if I didn't do the night work. So, but one of the last jobs that I did, we took the dry dock sections out of Boston. The dry dock that was headed for Bath up in Portland, we brought them up to Portland, and it was headed to do dry dock for the big ships in Bath in the shipyard there. And these were huge sections with wing walls on each side of the sections were, oh, I don't know, over 100 feet long. These wing walls were 50 feet high. And I had Dickie, and I guess Arthur, I've forgotten myself. My computer's so full, I've forgotten part of this story with this. And Captain Ronnie Hawkins reminded me of how all of this went. I remember I towed 7 different sections of it from Boston all the way up to Portland. With these wing walls, we had to be very careful. We had to choose our weather very carefully. We had to, well, we got a little headwind with those wing walls standing up like that. While we almost stopped, we would go so slowly along. If we had a fair wind, well, we'd be making maybe 3 or 4 knots, but the time went by and went by. We made so little time with those. I towed 7 sections of those up. There you can see that's the Bronx tied up alongside one of the sections getting ready to leave. And the other sections behind are still together. I think at this time, Ronnie was on the boat. Are you there, Captain Ron? Ron Hawkins, are you there?
I'm here now.
You're here now. There we are. I guess, as you say, you and Arthur took the first section up, and then I guess we did the next 7 sections, did we?
Yep, I was mate for the 7 other tows. I was mate with Arthur on the first one, mate with you on the other 7, and captain on the last one. So there was 9 sections together.
And they were so huge. We had another little boat, that little boat, to help make up the tow. The tow was chain and wire and all kinds of stuff. And Ron, of course, was in charge of doing all that. And
Towed on a soft hawser.
It was great fun getting all those sections up to Boston. And then in the end, why they sold the darn thing. They didn't take it to Bath, and they got a different dry dock and took it to Bath, as I understand it.
Is that the Dick Perini? That one?
Yeah, Dick Perini. Is she an antique tug, John?
Well, yeah, I'm sure she's razor blades now, but she played an important role for shifting stuff around for Arthur for quite a while.
Was it? Well,
rope steering.
Yep.
Yeah,
rope steering.
Rope from the steering wheel back to the rudder. Rope.
No, why I ran the boat lot. We used her as an assist boat when we were handling all those dry dock sections.
Right.
She went down off the coast of New Jersey.
Oh yeah.
Dick, Ron, did she stay right in Portland when Arthur had her, or did she go anywhere else?
We brought her up from Boston.
Yeah, we had her in Belfast for a little while.
Yeah,
oh,
she
really?
was all over the place. We actually, Billy Fournier and I towed a barge from Portland to Bath with her. Anyway, wow. Yeah, we used her every day doing that dry dock work. We used her as a stern thruster to keep the point in shape sometimes.
Yeah, I remember one time
I'm sorry, the Bronx.
he liked it because it could go right inside the dry dock
Right.
and get that bow position.
You had to have a good grip on the wheel because if you came ahead with any rudder rod, it would take your arm off.
Part of that effort with bringing the 7 different dry docks up, I had to bring the 2 barges at a tandem tow. One barge had a big crane on it, and the other barge had all the chain and anchors on it. A pretty good sized barge. I don't know how, it must have been 60 feet wide. But anyway, it had this enormous pile of chain, and all these mushroom anchors must have been, well, I don't know how many, but hundreds of mushroom anchors on that thing. It was the heaviest tow I ever towed. And I dropped the crane barge off on the other side of the bridge, and Arthur said, take the chain up through the Chinbro, up through the $1 Million Bridge. Well, I'd never been through the bridge before anyway, and I understand John tells me that it's 100 feet between the abutments on each side there. And by the time we got there we had a fair tide, and we had the towboat right alongside, of course, on the hip. And we went in, and it looked to me like we were going to have to be right dead on. And we were already, when we got to the point with a fair tide and everything, I had to keep my speed up, so I had steerage way. Just as we got to the abutment, we slacked our bow line off because we were on the hip, our stern was sticking out, you know, the way you have to do it on the hip. So we folded in just as tightly as we could, and we went through there. And I don't know, I would guess we had maybe 5 feet on each side, but that was certainly enough. That was pretty exciting for me to do a thing like that. I thought afterwards, with all that weight, if I'd have connected with anything, there'd been nothing left of the $1 Million Bridge. I'd be in jail. But those are the things you do. Don't pay any attention to them. That's quite a deal. Arthur was the pilot, the bridge pilot, after a while, wasn't he? John, do you remember?
Yeah, when he first got down to fight the war down there, he got Captain McDuffie, Ed McDuffie, to join him. And Eddie McDuffie was like considered the master of that bridge. He brought all those ships through there, and then he showed Arthur all of his skills. And then Arthur became a bridge pilot during that tugboat war down there.
If I remember right, that bridge was 98 feet wide and the Irving tankers were 95 feet.
95 feet.
Yeah, it had 3 feet of clearance.
Ed
Well,
McDuffie said you like to strike a match on the Portland side.
Right. And then
Go
you knew
through
you were
there.
clear on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the time,
It was very exciting for the tugboats because they would keep the tugs right on until they got right up to the bridge so that he could get that last little bit of adjustment. And then you'd have to back like crazy so you didn't get towed through there and get your line down. And then you follow the ship through. So he would go through by himself, and usually maybe a tug on the other side.
Ed McDuffie used to refer to it as a current or a set from the Portland side to the South Portland side. But what it really was there was no place for the water to go on the Portland side, and there was all mud flats on the South Portland side. So you'd run into a buffer on the bow of the ship. So you keep that starboard bow boat until you were about a boat length away from the bridge fenders there, and then let the line go. If you needed you to push him down to South Portland, you could come ahead on him a little bit, or you needed a lift, you could back, and he'd just use it as a spring line and come hard left on the ship. And because you were going through there about 4 knots, 4.5 knots to keep steerage way on the ship. So you drop your line when you're about a boat length away from the bridge fender system and back full, and put hard left rudder in the tug and back your stern out so that you didn't get sucked in under the stern when the ship went by. And usually you raised some smoke off the side of the ship when it went by. We did a lot of those in the first 2 years or so while I was with Arthur. Ed McDuffie left about 6 months into it. You could, someone else will have to check the dates, but it was a little too rough and tumble for Ed, so he was used to the Moran style of doing things with 3 square meals a day and pristine boats. So he decided to leave, and that left us with no pilot. So Arthur got a guy to come up, and his name escapes me, Doug could tell you. Came up from Delaware Bay, and we made 12 trips with the Bronx and the Elliott Winslow and the 1006 dump scow that was
Well,
up at Chimbro's yard at the time, and that put us over 1,600 tons, which qualified for pilotage for Arthur and this guy from Delaware. And so
Ish.
the guy from Delaware went down and took the test, and so he now had licenses, pilot license for Portland Harbor. So we were right back in business. We hardly missed, we might have missed a few ships in the interim, but we made the 12 trips from Portland Head up to Rolling Mills and back. And 6 of them, I see, 12 trips. I think 4 of them had to be after dark. But anyway, we made all those trips, and
great.
so Arthur
Well,
was able to sit for his pilotage soon after that. And by then he'd figured out, because he'd been riding with Ed McDuffie, so he knew how to get through the bridge.
we gotta keep moving here, Ronnie. This, I guess, was when they turned the Constitution around.
Yep.
And I don't know what year was that?
That was 86.
Was it 86?
Yep.
And
And Arthur decided he was involved in the war with the tugs in Portland, and the Boston towboat people were supporting Moran, and he decided he wanted to turn the USS Constitution, so he bid it
charged him $1.
just to do it and to kind of raise the banner. And he
Yeah.
they had done it for $1 every year, and Arthur decided that he could outsmart them, and he bid it for 1 penny. And
Oh, God.
But he got it.
he got the job. He
Yeah.
catered it with 150 people on there. The tugboat looks really great, but it looks like it's got a brand new bottom paint, but he just took that over to his shipyard there at what was the name of the property over there?
Longwood,
What was it?
Longwood.
Longwood, and just painted the water line so that it looked all shiny. When we made those canvas covers, and then we went down there, it was catered. We had 150 people on board. I cringe when I look at pictures now to see, people with their feet over the side and so forth, but you couldn't really pay attention to what was going on. And he did that. Howie Wentworth was with him as a pilot. You can see them. They're just over the bow of the tug. And they turned the USS Constitution. I was on the wheelhouse, and they fired the cannons. Everything went very well. And Boston Towing was really, really mad. And so when Arthur got back, they said, "You're never going to do that again. I'm going to make sure you never do that again." So they threw it in for free with their contract to move Navy ships in Boston. And then what Arthur did is he set up a wholly owned woman subsidiary and bid it again for nothing. And he got the contract to do it again the next year. And they were crazy. And he called down there, the story I was told, and he said, Phil Chase, I think was the guy down there. And he said, I got the contract to turn the Constitution, and they were livid. He goes, "I'm not going to do it. I just wanted you to know I can."
Well, now, getting back to Ron Hawkins.
Whoa!
Look at that one.
That was taken last summer.
He-Man.
That's pretty salty, Ron.
Yeah.
I guess you ran all those boats for you guys. Plus a whole
Yeah.
lot more.
That's the brothers on the outside, the tractor on the middle, and that's the new boat, I think. The Captain Arthur is on the inside. What used to be the Judy Moran.
This is a great picture, Ron.
Yeah, that's Bucksport turning. I think we sailed her out of there. I forget. I almost think she was. I'm not sure what's going on there, but whether she was pointed downstream or what the story.
What sunk?
The shadow of the shadow of the tug.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh,
Yeah, I
That's
guess
a shadow. Yeah, that's just a shadow. That's,
It
Weird.
looks like a real old picture.
Does.
I think that's the Patrick. I think that's the Patrick McAllister. Yeah. Anyway,
Looks like a Patrick.
Well, now tell us about this one, Ronnie.
this is the Helen
Yeah.
McAllister. She got tripped coming into Portland. They normally the barge that she was normally married to was in the yard, so they had a smaller barge that was an oil barge, and they came around the bell at what is it, Cushing Island, right there at the entrance to Portland, right across from Portland Head. Anyway, he had too much speed on, and the barge came up by him and tripped him and sank her, and the mate drowned in the wheelhouse. It was the mate's watch. Anyway, we towed McAllister towed the Century up from New York. She belonged to she belonged to the New Jersey Port Authority, but she was on lease to Whitty, and she was a steam derrick, neat old steam derrick, pretty much one of a kind by then. Anyway, we did the standby work and set the anchors for the barge. Actually, we used the Dick Perini to set the anchors. They did the standby. They worked daylight hours. They ran those wires you can see up in the left-hand corner. They ran the wires right around the boat so that they power buckled it when they lifted it until they got it up pretty much on even keel, and then re-rigged and got her up so that the thresholds were out of the water and was able to pump her out. And she went back to work. I think, I'm not sure who has her now. Her sister was lost on her maiden trip, southbound on the East Coast, went down with all hands, actually, running light boat. But those boats were bad design. They had stability issues, obviously. But she went back to work, and I think Whitty has got one or the other of them, or maybe both. And that's, you can see Arthur in the green sweatshirt there in the middle of that left-hand picture.
I recognize his hat.
Yeah, with a pork pie hat on. Yep. That was about a 3-day project, getting that boat righted back up and pumped out. And well, I was telling you earlier, Jim, the Century was lost off on her way back from somewhere down south, Northern Caribbean. I'm not sure, maybe Puerto Rico, but they got into a blow and she turned turtle. So
yeah,
she was upside down. She was drawing 70 feet of water with that A-frame. So they, long story short, the Navy sank her. A couple of jets flew over and she was a hazard navigation, so they eliminated it.
This is New York?
That's New York. Yep. That's one of the Staten Island boats, and I'm not sure. That's the Jennifer Terracamo.
Huh.
Moran boat. Yeah, that's looking up at the battery. That's a day in the Kills. Westbound. We're westbound with I was running the James Terracamo. That's we were on what they call the paper route. We were taking a recyclable paper from 52nd Street on Manhattan down to Tremley Point.
Huh.
And this was, you can see there's an outbound ship on the left, and we're following an inbound ship. And then beside that inbound ship is a dredge that's working.
Yeah,
So this was during what they call the zone time. There was
Busy.
an hour before and an hour after slack water at the zone where ships came and went. For the rest of the time, you could come and go as you pleased. But during the zone time, you had to talk to the pilots, and they were pretty good about letting you follow them if you could keep up. So,
Ron, what company was that you were working for then?
Moran. Yeah, that was the James Terracamo was the boat on the paper route. Yeah, this is inbound Fort Point, Penobscot with the boys, the newest tractor that Doug's got with Fort Point. And that's the boys were turning the ship around with the Irving ship because, as you can see, the fog up the river. So the job got postponed till visibility got better. We had good visibility, except you couldn't see the bridge. couldn't see Odoms either.
Yeah, that's
It's
the Patrick and
yeah, that's an old picture of the that's an old picture of the Patrick, probably before Arthur had her.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and the Captain Bill, I'm not sure where she came from. Arthur got her name. We used her in Portland quite a bit. And then that's the brothers, ex-Phoenix, that was a ex-Foss towing boat that Doug, that we had up here for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, twin screw. It was originally an army tug, originally single screw, but converted to twin screw, EMDs.
In the sea smoke.
Yeah,
Cool.
the smoke. Yep, the tower came with her, so they put it on. That's another picture of her in the sea smoke outbound in Belfast.
This is another one that I happen to be on with the Roderick. We were down there. I don't know how long we worked on that. I think we were there 4 or 5 days, maybe 6. And pumping fuel off of her, getting her off the ledge down in Massachusetts.
Salem,
We had,
Mass.
we had a lot of downtime down there, so I said to the crew, we might as well not sit around here. I grabbed a bucket of paint. I said, let's paint out inside it. And we painted all the accommodation, painted the galley, fixed the boat all up, spent our time to a good advantage there. Arthur was on board the ship trying to do the salvage work. He came back and saw that we had painted out everything down in the Roderick. She looked really very, very nice. And he wouldn't say a thing about it. He didn't even acknowledge it. It didn't matter. It didn't bother him. I thought I was doing such a good job. But that was a fun job to do. And we took a barge full of a crane barge back into Boston afterwards that they had used part of the salvage work. And Arthur came to me one day and he said, "Hey Jim," he said, "you married people on that schooner of yours, didn't you?" I said, "Yes, Arthur, I did. I've married quite a number of different couples." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Saturday, September 3rd. What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I don't know." Well, he said, how much would you charge me to marry Beth and I? I said, "Well, Arthur, I don't do that for a living. I don't charge anything." He said, "All right, you're on." So I said, "Okay, Arthur, I'll put on my best suit. You do the same thing, and we'll do it on the Roderick out in Belfast Bay." So we did. We took the Roderick over in Belfast Bay. Arthur all dressed up like that, and Beth, and the wedding party, and everybody aboard the Roderick. And we stopped her out in the middle of the bay there. I performed the ceremony, and for the first time in my life, I was able to order Arthur around. Instead of him telling me, "Do this, do that," I said, "Will you honor? Will you obey? Will you forever and ever?" And he said yes to it all. And of course, Beth did too. And I spliced them up. I spliced up a Matthew Walker knot, I guess a double Matthew Walker knot that day. And that's one of those knots that sailors use that you can neither tie nor untie. So I guess I did a pretty good splice because it held together right to the end, didn't it? She must have been
I was at that wedding.
Were you?
Oh, yeah.
Is that right? Yes, Gail. Good to see
Yeah,
you. Tell
you
us about
too.
the wedding.
It was a long time ago. I don't remember a lot. We had a good time. Those were fun times with
Yes.
the boyfriend at the time was his welder. And so we hung with those folks for, like a year. It was a lot of fun in those days.
Yep.
Who's the gentleman in the upper left with the scrambled eggs on?
I don't know. I asked Patrick about, or I asked Douglas about that. He didn't know. This is Beth's sister there, of course, but he didn't know any of the rest of them. Yeah. Well, then John Worth came along. I don't know what happened here, but Arthur had to get rid of those boats. I guess he had too many irons in the fire. And John Worth came and bailed him out. Well, John, you want to tell us about your acquisition here?
Well, first of all, thanks for doing this, Jim. It's really, really fun to see a lot of old shipmates on here and just talk a little bit about the tugs. But Arthur was one of these people that if he liked you, he would give you unbelievable opportunities. And I knew who he was. I brought my schooner into Belfast, and it was tied up at the dock getting spring outfitting. And he jumped down on the dock one day and he said, "John, would you take a tug to Eastport for me?" And I said, "Geez, I don't know anything about tugs." And he goes, "Well, you know how to run a big boat. I've seen you run that schooner in and out of the harbor." So I said, "Okay." So I went home and I called you, Jim, and I said, should I do that?" And you go, "Yeah." So
Why not?
why not? So at 5 in the morning, I was supposed to meet him up there. They were going to dock a ship. I was going to ride with him, and he had Dickie Carver, who had never done any docking for Arthur. And we went out in the wee hours of the night, docked the ship, and then he just told me where the radar was. He introduced me to Leo, and he said, "Take this to Eastport, and I'll see you up there. I'll fly up." So I went up. The compass was like 60 degrees off. The radar only ran on a 12-volt battery that Leo informed me well into the trip that I probably only had like 4 hours of running time on that. And off I went. The next thing I know, we were moving lash barges up in Eastport. And I developed a relationship with him, and he gave me some great opportunities. His son Billy said, "Geez, I'm sick of this. All I got up here is these schooner captains and strawberry farmers working up here." And next thing I knew, we were doing a lot of ship assist work with him. I met Duke. Duke was one of his full-time, part-time captains. Ron was working a lot in Portland, I think, doing that dry dock section thing was finishing up down there. So there's a lot of people here that I got a chance to meet, and that's a great picture there that I think Bill Abbott gave it to us. We put it in our office. That's the original tugboat owner that lived in Bucksport, and his name is escaping me right now. Ross.
I thought that was you in your early days.
Yeah, that was tugboat ownership before income tax. Those guys they were all dressed up, and that building is still there in Bucksport. If you go down, I think it's kind of near where McLeod's restaurant is. So that was yep. So Arthur was really involved in that war in Portland. So I was sort of managing the company up here for him. And at one point he got really sick, and he called me into his hospital room. He said, you should buy this. You should buy this company. And he goes, "You might want to get a partner." And which was kind of unusual for Arthur to say that, because he doesn't really believe in partners, I don't think, in general. But so I invited Duke to join me, and it was typical Arthur. It was right out of the movie The Godfather. He made me a deal that we couldn't refuse. He figured out the numbers. He said, "Whatever the bank won't loan you, I'll carry the paper." So he did, and we ended up buying what was the Bronx, which we renamed the Verona, Brian F., which we renamed the Mac Point, and then we ended up buying another tug firm a couple years later, which was the Cape. We named it the Cape Rozier. So that was the fleet that we were running for quite a while. It's really not much compared to what Doug Fournier is running up there now. The horsepower these were all 1,800 horsepower boats, single screw, diesel electric. 2 of them were diesel electric, and they were just really great. It was a great thing to be doing. Ship assist work, I find, is probably one of the most enjoyable things that a merchant mariner can do. Oh boy, where'd you find that one? Yeah, that's Duke and Bob LaFontaine and Danny Alexander and Lloyd Ratton and myself.
Wow.
That was on the coffee barge. Danny Alexander is still working tugs down in with Vane Brothers. He's actually on a boat with another one of our past employees, Tom Leeper.
And Bill Holmes.
And Bill Holmes. Yep. Yeah, this was a little sketch I did of the Verona, which we turned into a T-shirt. Yeah, it was a great opportunity. The coffee barge on the left, it was built in 1953, and Arthur acquired it and another one of the railroad tugs. So we went down, and Leo was with me, and we went down and we towed that unit up. But the tug, every time it would shut down, you didn't know if it would start again. So and Leo was with us, and at one point, see the doors on the side there, we had brought a truck down, and Arthur wanted to take it with us, and there was no way to drive the truck down. So they literally like jumped over the pilings and ran the truck into the side of the barge. And it was like something out of Dukes of Hazzard. It was ridiculous. And then the other thing we had was another rental car, and Arthur's modus operandi was if he had a rental car in Staten Island, he would go out and just cut the fan belt and call the company and say it wouldn't run anymore. Well, Billy Fournier and I went up there, and it was an electric fan. It didn't have a belt. I don't know how they ever got it, but and then this was a really great photo of a day's work there. You know, you usually have one tug approaching the bridge in Bucksport up on the bow. Another tug is either on the stern or on the other bow. These days, with these high evolution, best available technology ship docking tugs, you can stay right on the stern because you can work that hawser in any direction you want. The pilots really have some pretty amazing equipment up there now. Yeah, that's kind of all of the day's work, you know, getting the heaving line up. That's the tug up in the upper right there is the Verona, and that was our colors, which is the tan with the M and a couple of stars on it. And those boats were good. They were older boats. I mean, I'll have to say that, you know, we were getting away with murder because they were uninspected towboats, and we really could you know, take care of them in what way we felt was the best. There's a lot of regulation now. I think Ronald attests to the fact now there's just an amazing amount of drilling and paperwork and new Coast Guard regulations. That's a ship going into one on the right is the Mac Point, which was my favorite boat. It was an old railroad tug. And then the Verona on the left up there is moving the oil spill barge, which we had the contract to look after, that lives up in Bucksport. Yeah, these are great shots. I'm not sure where they all came from, but the vessel up on the right, oops, you can go back one. The vessel up on the right, I believe, is one of the last ships that went up to the Winterport terminal.
It was a Russian ship.
Yeah. And they were they were bringing in fish product and taking back blueberries, I think. But the actual dock plays into the story of Arthur. He provided that dock. It was this huge car float that he towed up there. I don't know, Ron, were you involved in towing it up there?
No, that was even before he bought.
Yeah, that was before Arthur even got here, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he didn't tow that up?
Was that?
I thought Arthur brought that there, I was always told.
If he did, he didn't. It was before he bought into the company.
Okay, well, anyway,
I loaded potatoes at that dock my first year out of high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that dock was basically just kind of a man-made float, and it had a freezer terminal. It was the only freezer terminal that was really accessible by ship in Maine at that time. And this looks like a launching, which was, in my mind, one of the really more fun things we did. After hearing your story about doing on Cape Fear, I feel like I was getting away with murder, but the Verona was electric, and because she was diesel electric, they really liked her as on the hawser because she could put just, 25 revolutions into the hawser, keep it taut, but without pulling the ship out of the ceremonies. And then you did always get the Kennebec up on the other side because they did it at the end of the flood. But I also remember the Kennebec would bail way earlier than you wanted her to. And it was pretty exciting. The gravity launches, I really missed those. There's Duke on the left. And it's quite a lot of it's tense. You want to make sure you're putting enough strain there, you can get away from it, but you also don't want to put any too much strain on it, so you pull it away from Susan Collins with the bottle of champagne or whoever. But it was interesting for me, and I don't know, maybe Ron or Duke will comment, but I love the winter launches because the ships came down significantly slower, and and there wasn't a huge fleet of private boats there in front of you. But in the summertime, that thing came down there like grease lightning, and you had just this fleet of boats in front of you. And I don't know what the cost of each one of those propellers is, but speaking of propellers.
Speaking of propellers.
Oh yeah. That's where the propeller ferry hit it.
Exactly.
That's Cape Rozier, right, Duke? You can take on that story.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
We went from a 4-bladed wheel to a 3-bladed wheel because, she wouldn't push. So we went to a 3-bladed wheel, and we also rebuilt the propulsion generator. Those boats were diesel electric, so they had a propulsion generator with these electric brushes that were probably 3 inches wide and a half an inch thick and like 6 inches long. They were huge, and there was a zillion of them. There you go. It's going into Bucksport with a quarter line.
Yeah, that's something that they don't have to deal with anymore. The quarter lines were used to keep the tugs in shape when you were backing, and they were pretty dangerous because they were loaded, and then if the ship moved ahead too much, they got even more loaded, and that's how you could trip a boat. But these days, with almost all of the equipment that Captain Fournier is using up there with the twin screw boats and azimuthing drives, I don't know, Ron, you guys don't use quarter lines at all anymore, right?
No.
Yeah, good riddance.
The lines we were using for quarter lines weren't strong enough to trip the boat. They'd fired off before that happened, but it was an extra little thing to do, and it was a lot of times they were quite long because of the spacing of the chocks on the ship.
Right.
Yeah, that's a nice picture of diesel electric unit on the Verona. And that's the actual electric drive motor there. And as Duke was talking about the brushes, you access them on the side, and they were pretty impressive.
That was a 1,500 horsepower electric motor, DC electric motor, that ran directly coupled to the propeller shaft. So it was like having a propeller on a rheostat. Like John said, you could wind it down to about 20 RPM, and he had a lot of control, as opposed to a clutch boat where when you engage it and the air clutch takes over, all of a sudden you're going ahead at 75 or 100 RPM. Favorite position for the Verona.
Yep, that's the boats coming out of Belfast. I think we weren't going out to do a job. I think we were getting ready to hide from a blow. We used to have to play merry-go boats to keep, keep them all.
That could have been the year of all the ice, John.
Yes, I think you're right. That's what we were doing. We were getting out of there for the ice.
Hanging out in Searsport.
This is the tug Penobscot, which is the training schooner. The training tug at Maine Maritime Academy was formerly the Jekyll Isle, and they they got a really good buy on it, and it's used for training for the Maritime Academy students. And I had the pleasure of doing that for 7 years.
Is that a weather station you're towing behind?
Yeah, that was a little bit of a interesting show. They made this 1/6 model of the wind turbines they're hoping to put off of Monhegan, and but the 1/6 model, you could only tow it at 3 knots because that's, you know, times 6 is what you'd be doing if you towed the real one. So and they had a dynamometer back there so that if you towed it too strong, they would tell you, you know, you had to slow down. Well, the problem with all that is that they took a while getting underway up there in Bangor, Brewer, and we ended up with about a 20-knot southwest wind by the time we got down to Fort Point. I think that's Fort Point behind me. And so we were making like a knot without putting that amount of pressure that I was not allowed to do. So we managed to make it, but it took forever. The little tug down on the left is something that we built at Maine Maritime. See this little guy down there with the solar panels on it? Somebody gave us an 18-foot open boat. So I took with our students and we put 2 trolling motors back aft. You know, electric trolling motors would go 360. So we could give them the effect of running a Z-drive type tugboat. So we called it Z-boat. And it was really a great training aid. It was very fun. And then on the left is the ship simulator that's at Maine Maritime Academy. And that's actually a couple of years later, Boston Marine Society gave us $30,000 and we retrofitted out one of their lab stations to be exactly like a tractor tug with shot tail drives and a reversing seat. So that turned out to be a good way to teach people Z drives. And this is the academy. We had a line throwing contest, and usually Wayne Hamilton would give us some kind of a gift at the end of the year, but it was really fun. Whenever I wanted to do that, I would get Patrick Fournier to come over because he could kill it and he would show these guys how to do it. And a lot of those students that are out in the towing industry really liked getting that experience. I think Ron and Duke and any of the other tug captains around here will agree that if you've got a deckhand that can throw that line on the bit, he's your new best friend because it makes everything a lot better.
Couldn't you afford a bucket of paint, John?
What's that?
Couldn't you afford a bucket of paint?
Oh, yeah. Well, this is the side that's away from the town, so we didn't care about that as much.
Oh, I see. Well,
yeah, it's a great shot there of Dave Jelinas, Skip Strong, and Doug, who's now one of the pilots up here. And where they were was I would take every year on the tug and barge, we would go up to Bangor with every group of students. And I would invite these guys along because they would give the students invaluable relationships of working with pilots on tugs for one thing, but also these guys would get recency they needed because there wasn't much going on up in Bangor. So this was them coming along and it was great. And
yeah.
That's the tow business.
That's the tow
There you
business.
go.
Yeah. Then the Fournier boys came and took over. They bought the company back from you.
Yeah, they actually bought it back from Duke. I sold out in 2003. And Duke, when did you sell to Arthur back?
06, and then Arthur bought it from me to give it to the boys. Yeah.
That's a nice tug, the Judy. She's a really powerful boat.
I understand Doug's on a mission today, so he wasn't able to join in, but I thought that was a pretty great picture.
Yeah, that one on the left, he's up on the Bronx. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is their tractor. They were one of the first. I can't even imagine how they swung it. They have that boat up here. That is the most amazing boat. It's like running a sports car. It can do anything. It has 2 Z drives back aft, and then this one's a ship docking module that they recently bought. It was a couple of years now, and it's got a Z drive on either end offset. I think it can develop like 60-ton bollard pull. Is that right, Ron? 60 tons, something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, there's an engine. She's 90 feet long and 50 feet wide, and there's an engine in each corner, and then propeller in each corner opposite.
Yeah.
The propellers are in the Z drives are in the corners of the boat. Yeah.
Look at how clean that engine room is.
Oh yeah, they've brought the Tugs to a level that's very, very impressive.
Just amazing.
Those Z drives though are a little bit like I would tell my students, it's a difference between flying a single engine airplane and a helicopter, because they're so maneuverable that you really have to kind of hold on to the controls all the time to make them work. Wow, there she is.
Yeah, so that's the new boat and the Judy or the Captain Arthur in Searsport.
I think the boys is like 80 feet by 50 feet of beam, right? It's almost round.
Yeah, I think it's 90 by 50. Yep.
Yeah, you could have a pretty good wedding on there if Arthur was still around.
Yeah, I guess. And these nozzles now, they turn in all directions.
Yeah, they by being in those ports, they really develop a lot more horsepower, and they're 360 degrees. They're pretty amazing.
Well,
These are the boats that John and I lusted over when we had the company.
Oh yeah, I would have killed for one of those. They're just so beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing you notice is that their visors aren't folded in because they can get away with working in places that you couldn't use a conventional tug.
yeah.
They're so able to stay out of that, and plus they put the wheelhouse further into the center like a control tower. Yeah, this is the old days here.
Yeah, Douglas sent these to me. I don't know if David Galenis is on. He's working tonight, he said, but he may be on his telephone.
No, I'm
I don't
standing
know.
by right here, Captain.
Hey, there
There
you
he
go.
is.
You're there, David. Good. Great. I wanted to show a little bit of the Pilot Association and how you guys work together with the towboat companies. And so I wanted to get your name up here to start out with. And tell me about this intermarine vessel. It looks like you're stirring up a lot of mud there.
Yeah. A lot of the ships that are going to the bulk dock like to back in and go starboard side too. So that's the evolution that's going on here. And just like Captain Worth was saying a moment ago about the capabilities of these Z drive boats, now that we have the Z drives, it makes the job so much easier because they're just so maneuverable. So periodically, some of the ships that want to go to the bulk dock like to back in. That's what you're looking at there.
Yeah, great. I don't think people realize what you guys go through. And
Yeah.
you gotta be out there to realize what you go through. I mean, walking on icy decks, trying to board these vessels, climbing ladders up the sides of these ships, the great long ladders. People don't think about that.
Yeah, well, and the interesting thing, Captain, is that actually the ships are easier to get on than the tugs and barges. You know, we've been looking at tugs and barges tonight as assist boats and doing a lot of assist work, but it wasn't that many years ago that about 30% of the traffic coming in and out of Penobscot Bay with the oil that would come up was brought here by tugs and barges, coastwise tugs and barges. And, you know, recently those types of vessels now have converted over to integrated units where the tug is in a notch, a permanent notch. But it wasn't that long ago, right? There's a great example. It wasn't that long ago where you had to step from the pilot boat over to a tugboat towing a loaded oil barge astern. And that's the most dangerous job we do right there, is getting on and off tugboats out at the pilot station. Hands down, that is the most dangerous thing that we do. Getting on and off the ships is a piece of cake compared to the tugboats.
Nobody knows what you guys go through. You got to be there to see it.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Can be a challenge.
I thought that's an interesting picture with the wake of the propellers coming out both sides.
Well, that is one of our boats that was not, was gone, has gone away now, but that was one of the single screw boats that that Captain Doug Fournier had, that they installed a stern thruster in. So it was a single screw boat, but it had a stern thruster, so it could effectively act like a twin screw boat, or even a limited capability Z drive boat. So that was a pretty nifty feature, having a single screw tug with a stern thruster. Very handy.
Very economical.
That was a great boat.
Yep.
And this is the pilot. That's all you have for a steering wheel nowadays. Those little levers, huh?
For the most part on the ships, yeah, it's you walk on sometimes, but you actually have to wonder where the steering is, because it's just a little tiny 4 or 5 inch lever. It's a lot more like Star Trek.
Yeah.
This is an interesting picture. So this is a vessel, this is a cruise ship going into Bar Harbor. And what each of those targets represents on the screen right there is a lobster buoy. And so we try really, really hard. We work closely with the fishing community, and we try our darndest to stay very, very close to the published recommended routes to minimize the impacts to the fishing gear. And you can see right there, the fishermen, they don't give us a lot of latitude. They'll fish right up to those little dotted lines. It's pretty tough to keep 1,000-foot long ship on a dotted line when you've got a lot of wind and current.
It's amazing that it picks up all those buoys.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're dealing with up there.
What an incredible advancement in radar, huh?
Yeah.
Yep. Well, wintertime, tough times.
Wintertime in Bucksport. So that's what I was talking about with the tugs and barges going offshore, bringing up the oil.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Well, great. Well, I'm glad you got on with us.
Well, thanks for doing this, Captain. It's great.
Not at all.
I don't know. You don't look as salty as Ron in there, Jim.
No, I don't have. I'm not showing my muscles. Now, if I showed my muscles, it'd be different, you know. We're getting so late here that I guess I'll just skip down through. This is my little tug wrestler, wonderful little jewel of a tug I was able to get. I bought her in the dead of winter in February, brought her home, and she was all iced up to the last when we arrived in Camden with her. She's such a beautiful little watch fob, a gorgeous little thing built in the 1920s, wooden, of course, and she had a Cooper Bessemer, 4-cylinder Cooper Bessemer, very early, slow-turning engine in her. Nothing to you tugboat people, but to me it was a fascination. Wonderful little tug. There's her engine. You'd start her and roll that great big flywheel, and she'd rock back and forth and make little wavelets around her when each time she started. Then she'd blow these wonderful smoke rings 20 feet in the air over her stack. John Van Pelt, she was a Staten Island tug, and this is 1920s when she was working for the Van Pelt Company over at Staten Island. That's her original name board. I'm not going to. I'll just skip through here. That's one of the early guys that he took the old Cooper Bessemer out. He put a GM, I think it was a GM anyway, maybe Leo knows what that is. He put that engine in. Then he didn't like it. He took that engine out and he put the Cooper back in her again. Wonderful little vessel. I used to tow the schooners back and forth to the shipyard that way. She had stained glass windows in her boot heel. That a friend of his did. I took her south one time. We went all the way to the Keys and back again in her, and you'd shut her down when you get back, and you'd kind of miss the rhythm of her. She had such a wonderful rhythm. In 1991, she sunk over in Camden, across from Philadelphia, Camden, New Jersey, and they raised her again, but they never pumped out that engine. She froze up and spoiled that engine, and the next year they put her in her grave here. The guy that did that to that little boat should burn in hell forever. I had the record then, an old Norwegian with a 2-cylinder semi-diesel in her. And I used that as a tugboat for a while. Then I got the port assist. She had a big Caterpillar in her. And I thought I'd do some small jobs with her around. She was a fun tug, steel hull with a wooden superstructure. And we
Peter Drury up on the bow there.
huh?
Oh, that one, that was picture of Peter Drury up there.
Oh, yeah. Peter was with me. This is the launching of the Heritage. We had a whole gang down there at her launching. And then I sold her off to George McAvoy. She became the companion vessel for the Sherman's Ricker. Don't give up the ship. You never know, there might be a little bit of goodness left in her. Thank you very much for coming. There's coming attractions. We just did tugboats, and we're going to do on March 1st schooner cooks with a whole bunch of different cooks, including Bridget and Ellen Barnes is going to be on. It's going to be a hoot. A whole lot of different cooks, and they're going to be telling of their experiences on the schooners, trying to feed all those people. Then on the 15th of March, we're going to do the morning in Maine, the ex-Swan 5, and Andy Chase, I hope, will be with us then, and Captain Waterman, who's running the vessel this summer. Then we're going to take the captain's quarters, take the summer off, go sailing, have a good time, and we'll see in the fall. We'll do a whole lot more wonderful new things in the fall. Any questions? Certainly be glad to answer them. If you want to read something to read in your idle hours, my memoirs, 40 Years of Voyaging, freight boats, tugboats, schooners, 4 schooners, and my memoirs. Most of it's even true. You can't really tell.
Don't forget the 22nd of May.
Any questions? When I jump right in, right now, here's your chance to ask any questions. All these professional captains here, if you have any questions, I jump right in and ask them. This is your chance.
Don't forget about the 22nd of May.
Yeah, Bob, that's a good point. Jim Sharp and Meg and Robin have been working with me possibly of having a reunion of the Propeller Club in National Maritime Day, which is May 22nd, down at his museum. And I'll be sending out details on that. I assume that's what you're talking about, Bob.
Good.
I'm going to write that down on the calendar.
Yeah,
Great. We'll put the coffee pot on and have little things to eat and stuff like that.
well, in 2013, we had a huge National Maritime Day up here in Belfast, but it would be really nice to just get some of those people. There's a lot of New York pilots and Penobscot Bay pilots and people and all kinds of tugboat people that were in that group, and I think they would get a lot out of your museum, Jim. I think you guys are doing a great job.
You should have sent him a letter.
Yes. You mean actually one with a postage stamp on it?
Or carry it over.
Thank
It
you
won't
so
get there
much,
till
Captain
November.
Jim. Fabulous program tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Thank you,
That was
Jim.
great.
We wouldn't be here without you. Leo, it was great to see you.
Likewise, same to you. Good to
You
see
take
you.
care. You
do
take
the
care.
same.
Yeah. Well, good night, all.
Thanks, Jim.
Hi, Captain. Thank you.
See
Thank you,
y'all.
Robin. Yep. Good night, all.
Good night.